Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a safe and an easy week. But can I just say, this has been one hell of a month. This has got to be one of the most challenging months we have faced yet. And this is because, of course, of the market, the load board, but also the technology and the human factor, freight brokers. So today I want to talk about the realities of the trucking industry apart from the data. Ready? Let's go. Now, there's a pattern that I'm starting to see on this channel. Anytime I release a video showing an improvement in the market situation using data, there is always a group of people that get very upset with either me for releasing this information or with the data because they feel like what this data is showing is simply not applicable to their own experiences. So again, instead of focusing on data today, I want to talk about what it's like to live and breathe this industry every single day. If we look at data from last week, we'll see that spot market rates have increased across the board for all equipment types. We'll see that rejections are above the 5% mark. We'll see that volumes on the spot market also increased, but the majority of us feel like the market did not change for the better or even got worse. So what is the reality of trucking right now? And the way I'm going to approach this video is by looking at the money-making abilities, the income, and then looking at costs in this industry. On the income or the money-making side, the first thing that comes to mind is rates are low. But let me tell you, rates are the least of our problems. Because of the rampant fraud that exists in this industry right now, those who have loads to sell, whether it be a shipper or a broker, they put up such barriers that it's almost impossible to jump through those barriers to get the next load. Now, a lot of carriers are finding themselves in a situation where they have to get reset up with brokers they have worked with for years because most of the brokers are starting to use a new carrier vetting tool called Highway. From my own experience, I have had brokers who I have worked with from the beginning, over 5 years ago, tell me that they cannot work with me anymore because Highway blocks us. Why does it block us? Because number one, we have a California address, and unfortunately, freight fraud is rampant in California. Number two most common reason is we don't have reefer breakdown insurance, even though we are a flatbed carrier. Now, of course, I have been successful in getting some brokers to override those barriers, but others that I have worked with for 5 years say there is nothing they can do. This is the new system and this is what they have to work with. And in those cases, it often costs us a good load or even a day of work. Now, putting Highway aside, we have had brokers deny us loads because of a recent out of service order that happened in California because we were overweight on one of our axles. We operate 53-foot flatbeds. So that means that for this type of equipment, you can be legal on your axles everywhere except for California. I'm not saying it wasn't our fault. It was 100% our fault. But yes, that out of service order has cost us loads. We have even had a broker deny us a load because of tracking. We were in a situation where we hauled a load for this broker a week before, but we were going through middle of nowhere, Nevada, where the service is really bad. So trucker tools got interrupted. So it was intermittent tracking. The next time we reached out to this broker a week later for a load, they said that due to the intermittent tracking of the load before, they cannot use us on this particular load because this load requires constant tracking, even though we were just in an area where there was no ability to track. There was no service. So as a carrier with an MC that is over 5 years old, with 0 claims, 0 accidents, we are no longer able to trust the fact that tomorrow we are going to be successful in booking a load. Now, when you are able to book a load, then there is the human factor, and you have to trust that what the broker is writing in the rate confirmation and what they're telling you over email or on the phone is actually the way everything is going to be. So, for example, that the weight is going to be as stated in the rate confirmation, that the pickup and delivery dates, forget about the times, that the pickup and delivery dates will be correct in the rate confirmation. But that's not always the case. For example, you might come to the receiver on Friday and all of a sudden you're stuck for the whole weekend because the broker didn't tell you that this receiver does not work on Fridays, and the next time you are able to unload is only on Monday. What happens during this time? You lose your next load, potentially causing a freight guard for being a fall off. Or you come to the shipper and the broker told you and wrote in the rate confirmation that the load is 22,000 pounds. You get to the shipper and it's 48,800 pounds, which makes you overweight. You can't haul that load. So you cancel that load. And the worst part is brokers will often not pay you layover or tonneau or detention. And on top of all of that, there is now Carrier 411, which allows brokers to file a freight guard report against a carrier who is asking for additional pay. Not that that has ever stopped me from asking for the money that I was owed. And finally, we do have to talk about the freight market, even though I said that rates are the least of our problems. The data is showing that spot rates increased last week for all three equipment types, but the reality is very different. And the reason is that this market is broken. There are only a handful of market areas for each equipment type that are more or less survivable. But the problem is a long-haul carrier is not able to stay within those more survivable markets for long. What you will often see is, for example, you have a flatbed and you go to a place like Oregon, which right now has more loads than there are trucks. Out of Oregon, you will get a fantastic rate. Relatively speaking, a pretty good rate going to Colorado, to Wyoming, to North Dakota, to Montana. So you make all of this money going from Oregon to, let's say, Wyoming. But then you get stuck in Wyoming because there is nothing. And what you end up doing is either deadheading out or booking a crap load trying to get out, which means that everything that you just made on that load from Oregon to Wyoming, you just lost getting out of Wyoming. Now, let's talk about the expenses side. And here I'm going to give you a piece of news that just came out a few days ago. JBF Freight Consulting decided to dig and see what is the real average cost per mile for a carrier. And considering the fact that the cost of everything is up, for example, maintenance, repairs, insurance, another thing that is up is the deadhead miles. Something that a lot of people don't really pay attention to is that deadheading costs money. And right now, a lot of us are in a position where we are deadheading more because of the lack of freight. So what they found was $2.72. That is the number. $2.72 is the break-even price for a truckload carrier on average right now if you are hiring drivers. Which equipment type right now, whether on the contract or spot market, gives you an average of $2.72 or more? Obviously, someone like an owner-operator working under their own MC with no hired drivers and paid off equipment will have a vastly different cost per mile. But if you are a small carrier hiring drivers with financed equipment, your average cost per mile is $2.72. So the question is, how in the world are small carriers supposed to survive considering the fact that the market has not seen these kinds of rates in over 2.5 years? So what is the situation that we're stuck in right now? The money-making ability is down, but the cost of everything is up. Yet, capacity is holding strong. What is happening? So just a few days ago, I had a candid conversation with one of my business partners about this, and he gave a very straightforward, not data-driven answer that made complete sense. In the good times, what people did was they bought a ton of equipment. A lot of it was financed. So right now, these folks are sitting with those financed trucks and trailers that they are still trying to pay down. And those same folks are right now working in this horrific market in order to just be able to pay down their equipment. They can't sell their equipment right now in this market because if they do try to sell, they're still taking a hit because they will not be able to sell for the same amount that they owe. So right now, there are a lot of people in this industry who have a choice of filing bankruptcy or defaulting. But something you will know if you have financed a truck or a trailer is that very often a financing company will make you the personal guarantor, which means that you are not fully protected. So people are quite literally shackled to their equipment with no sensible way to quit. So the reality is, yes, data will show you some averages and some movements below the surface in the market, but rarely are those movements applicable to the everyday experiences of actual truck drivers and folks who are in this industry. You might end up in a market one day which is a better market and you'll say, hey, the data is right. And the next day you end up in a bad market and you realize, oh, it was just a fluke. It was just one of those handful of markets that was better than everywhere else. So you are not alone in feeling like, hey, this data is not mirroring my experiences. This doesn't make the data wrong. It just makes it data. It's raw numbers that do not take into account the human factor and the fact that things happen outside of numbers in this industry. Anyway, guys, I wanted to make this video to ensure that you do not feel alone, that you don't feel like you're on a different planet when looking at the data and seeing that spot market rates went up, but I don't feel it. You're not alone. These data movements are so tiny that they will not yet be felt by a person who lives and breathes this industry. So I'm wishing you strength, patience, and persistence, and I will see you in the next video.